Tom, the big story of the day is, of course, what's coming out of Alberta. I know you've been talking about this probably a bunch today. I think a lot of people have been left scratching their heads wondering what Danielle Smith is actually trying to accomplish here. So can you put that into sort of some context?
I really wish I could make sense of it, but there's no sense to be made of it. It's nonsense. So Danielle Smith has made it her political career to be constantly in a state of grievance, complaint, and recrimination vis-a-vis the federal government, something that Quebecers are familiar with. So we sort of take it with a grain of salt. And she's overplayed her hand because up until very recently, she was playing the following game. Again, one that we know well. It's essentially saying, well, you'd better give us what we want, otherwise we might have to separate. Now, the problem for her is the big issues that she's always complained about, ability for Alberta to develop its natural resources, get them to market. She's got a friend and an ally, and his name is Mark Carney, and he happens to be the Prime Minister of Canada. So, oopalai, all of a sudden she's got nothing to complain about, but she's still got a bunch of crazy people that she's riled up and said, no, we might have to separate from Canada. And these guys are serious. I mean, they are the same people who fired Jason Kenney. The guy's the premier of the province of Alberta, and they got together and turfed him because he wasn't enough on their side. So Danielle Smith is trying to be clever about this, but she's going to get caught. And she's going to get caught because what she's done is ask a two-barrel question, which in and of itself makes no sense. So do you want to stay in Canada or do you want us to hold a referendum on separation? She says that this is in answer to a court case that said, well, you're not allowed to have your separation referendum right now anyway because you've never consulted First Nations, which is pretty clear. And so she's using that as an excuse to come up with this boneheaded move of hers, which is to say, okay, we'll have a referendum, but it won't really be about separation. It'll be about whether or not we want a referendum on separation. So it reminds me more than anything else, Aaron, and you remember this as well, the 1980 gambit of the separatists, which was, no. The referendum's not on separation. The referendum is on a mandate to negotiate separation. Right. That'll work. So it's the same sort of game. You're playing games with the future of a great country like Canada, and it's in the hands of somebody who is not a bad politician at all. In fact, she's quite clever, but I think she's being too clever by half. I think this one's going to turn around and bite her.
Well, so when you say that, does that mean you don't end up having that referendum in October in Alberta? It doesn't get that far? What does it mean,
Oh, no,
Tom?
there will be a referendum on October 19th. There's no question about that, unless she gets fired in the meantime. Because the people who are angry about the fact that she's not holding a referendum on separation, because you see, there was this whole process put in place by Danielle Smith that she actually tweaked to help the separatists. So in terms of the number of votes, number of signatures you need and all that, she made life easy for them. So all of a sudden, they've got all the votes that they need, all the signatures that they need, right, and they're entitled to a referendum. Now she's telling them, you won't get a referendum until I ask all Albertans whether or not they want a referendum. And in that case, they'll decide whether you get a referendum. So she's changed the game completely for them, so they're furious at her. And people who really care about Canada are furious with her because she's like someone playing with matchsticks in a room full of dynamite. She doesn't understand she's never been through a referendum. She doesn't understand how awful they are for the economy, for insecurity, in the workplace, even in families. She has no clue. All she knows is that Danielle Smith needs a way out of what Danielle Smith has been doing as a political game for her whole career. And now that she's finally got what she's wanted, she's got to figure out a way to try to slither out of it. And it's not going to work.
I can't help but wonder as you describe this, people, the administration down south looks at this and goes, well, look at that. Even Alberta doesn't want to be in Canada. Quebec doesn't want to be in Canada. I mean, it doesn't send a very clear message. I mean, it sends a clear message just to them anyway that, you know what, maybe this is prime for the picking.
Well, not only that, Aaron, think about it for a second. The big projects that she's always been saying that she wants to have, but the feds weren't there and they were always blocking everything, those cost hundreds of billions of dollars. All of a sudden, she's got a federal government saying, no, we're going to make life easy for you. The approval process is going to be a lot faster, and we're going to be on board. How do you raise hundreds of billions of dollars in the market when you're threatening to break up the greatest country in the world?
Yeah.
So it's self-defeating. But as you can see, it's all about Danielle Smith saving Danielle Smith. It has nothing to do with saving Alberta, nothing to do with saving Canada, everything about saving Danielle Smith.
Tom, I want to ask a question. Maybe this is a bit off base. So she got the memorandum, the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding from the... Is she playing Mark Carney?
No, Carney didn't need to have a threat to be on board to develop resources faster. Everything that Mark Carney's been doing in the year and a bit that he's been there has been to say, we need to develop new resources. We need to develop new markets. We've got to get away from our dependence on Americans. And that's why he's fully on board. He went and saw David Eby, the Premier of BC, yesterday, basically said, stop whining. You're getting a lot of stuff in the big projects that I've approved, and I don't need people who've got problems. I need people who've got solutions. I mean, it's tough messages. And he's doing it because he figures that we've never been in a position quite this difficult with the Americans breathing down our necks, and we've got to change the way we've been doing things.
So let me move on and talk about another story, which I don't think is in our list, but I wanted to bring it up because I talked about this yesterday. It was a question to our listeners. There's a new report from the Montreal Economic Institute that shows if we here in Quebec went ahead and developed our natural gas industry, let's start with natural gas, it could add $93 billion to the economy, create 230,000 jobs, high-paying jobs to boot over the next 25 years. We know at the same time that even though there's always been pushback against this, right, the environmental pushback, the most recent poll that asked Quebecers, given what we're going through right now, given an administration on our border that, is not favorable to us anymore for the time being, more Quebecers now, a majority actually say, you know what, okay, let's go ahead and do this. We're buying this stuff anyway. Why don't we just use the stuff we have sitting in the ground? What did you see the study, and what do you think of this?
I did not see that study, but I know those arguments. There's nothing new in what you just said from the Montreal Economic Institute. They've always been on that side. And François Legault, frankly, was peddling exactly the same thing when he got elected the first time in 2018. And he would put up numbers almost identical to that and say, well, why would we leave that in the ground? What people forget is that, first of all, that's not profit. It's potential sales of an unproven resource. Second of all, Quebecers have had their experience. The wells that were capped and closed because there were exploratory wells, dozens of them, most of them are still leaking, even though they were under court order to stop the leaks and to close them off. This can go after groundwater. It can affect the best producing agricultural regions of the province. The first place that they started looking for gas and oil, Anticosti Island, only a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And forget about these companies. They pump carcinogens into the ground, cancer-causing substances into the ground to try to get out the last wisps of hydrocarbons at the expense of future generations. This is a dumb project. It's the exact type of thing that the Montreal Economic Institute loves to peddle. It's facile stuff, and it's an insult to anybody who knows what this industry is about.
I just want to ask one question based on that. I understand your point. Someone suggested when I asked the question yesterday that, you know what, it's not 1980 or 1990 anymore. Technology has improved in this area.
Baloney.
Okay.
Baloney. First of all, these wells weren't drilled in the 1980s. They were drilled 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and they're still leaking. No. That's magic thinking. That's always the idea that somehow there's going to be a new technology that makes it safe to do this. It's not safe. Quebec's smart. We're on the side of the angels on this one, saying leave that stuff in the ground.
Okay. Tom, I wish you a nice weekend. Are you going to the Grand Prix, or are you heading downtown? What are you doing?
Staying as far away from downtown as I can.
Someone who's been here before.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers. Powered by North by Northeast Music Festival. Taking place June 10th to 14th across Toronto. iHeart New Music. Stream now, online, on your smart speaker, and preset on the free iHeartRadio app.